All right, welcome back. You're watching Liquid Lunch. I'm John Tobacco, and every single day we bring you the best guests, the ones that know where the rubber meets the road, and a guy who's been with us from the very beginning. He's been with me for the last dozen, if not more, years. My partner and co-host Frank Morano joins us, and a great friend of the show, Tim Hentschel, CEO of HotelPlanner.com, joins us as well. What's up, guys? How are you?
Hey, John. Hey,
We're
Tim.
good.
How are you?
Good. So, Tim, I know I had you on going back a few months ago, right before this thing actually became the grim reality it is here in the U.S. And we both kind of thought that it was going to pass, and by now we'd be back and moving again. How has Hotel Planner started to look forward on when things will clear up or when travel will be a profitable business again?
When it will be profitable again, probably not till next year at the soonest. But we're trying to hit an equilibrium this month. Hopefully, if it's not May, then it'll be June. But yeah, we've had to make tremendous cuts, as lots of travel companies have and hospitality companies have. And the good news is, with the lockdowns being lifted, we've actually hired 8 people this week. So it's not bad. I won't talk about the massive amount of cuts we've had to make in April and March, but at least this first week we made some new hires. So it's been some silver lining.
So, Tim, I know you're in Singapore now, and now it was being reported that there was a whole second wave of coronavirus infections in Singapore, mainly in crowded foreign workers dormitories. I am curious, Singapore, along with Taiwan, Hong Kong, Germany, those are a few of the countries that were pointed to as a model of how to handle this. Being in Singapore, what can you tell us about how the government and how public health officials did handle this pandemic, and what lessons can we learn here in the United States, either positive or negative, from what they did out there?
Yeah, so I touted Singapore as one of the countries that was handling the crisis best from social distancing, up until the point where 45 days ago they went into a full lockdown. And probably only 3 days into the full lockdown, I actually penned a letter to the White House and predicted that Singapore was going to be a disaster by going into full lockdown. And it was about the fact that they had these migrant worker dorms, which some people had already been talking about, that were not suitable for 24/7 lockdowns. And that was going to have the disease spread even faster. So yesterday we had about 800 infections, and 90% of those were in the worker dorms. So now they're talking about the local citizens. Actually, the infection rate is going down, and so they're talking about easing the lockdowns slightly. But the migrant worker dorms is a huge black eye on the Singapore government right now, and they don't know what to do with it. But I made the same point as the hot spots that you were seeing in New York City and Chicago, where you have, low income, high urban density. Those kind of living environments are not suitable for a 24/7 lockdown.
Yeah, well, it showed here in New York because our president, our Governor Cuomo, came out with some stat last week that 66% of the cases that presented themselves at hospitals were people who were sheltering in place. So maybe in more dense areas, the sheltering is actually working against itself.
Well, absolutely. And New York has had the roughest time, and some of it is bad leadership, as you probably have talked about. Putting infected people in old folks' homes and nursing homes was a huge mistake, a crime that should be punishable. And of course, that spiked the numbers, and then that gives a rise to more tyranny and reason to keep people locked up, because you spike numbers from something that was reckless. And now you're seeing that left and right. I mean, it's very much in line with what happened here in Singapore. You put all these migrant worker dorms 24/7, you spike the numbers, and now all of a sudden everybody has to be on lockdown, all the citizens. So it hasn't been that organized.
I do want to ask you a little bit about the future of travel as a business, and the future for travel as a recreational activity for people. But if you were in charge, whether you were in charge of a state, a country, a city, wherever the case may be, understanding that you're not a public health expert, what would you be doing? What's the best way to balance the need to get control of this virus and this pandemic while at the same time not shut down large sectors of the economy, or do what you and John are describing in Singapore and actually help precipitate a second wave because of a lockdown?
Well, I was actually lucky enough to be in Singapore when this hit first back in January, and social distancing worked best that they were doing. They were taking the temperature of every building you went into. They would take your temperature. They would make you sign travel declaration forms before you got into any building. They would, have people distance from each other naturally, but just social distancing, and the numbers were flat and declining, but yet people could still go around about their daily lives. And it kept people a lot healthier because we were getting vitamin D, we were getting sunlight, we were still able to play sports. I mean, they stopped golf, they stopped tennis, especially tennis. When do you touch anybody in tennis? You don't. But it is, a way to get some vitamin D and to get some sun and to stay healthy. As we know, this disease attacks people who are unhealthy harder than people who have good respiratory systems. So keeping a good exercise routine, it was a good way of lasting through this. Before we went on total lockdown, I traveled to 4 different continents from January all the way to the middle of March. I was in Australia, I was in North America, I was in Europe, and then I was up in China. So there was, and Thailand. So I was everywhere, and I never got sick, and I just kept my distance from everybody. And it's possible to go about your life and not get sick if you're smart about it.
Yeah, well, Timmy, if you play golf like me, golf also, I'm never near anyone because my ball's usually going left and right. But I think here, at least in the States, in New York, they're allowing golf again. And from what I understand, they're allowing tennis and some other light recreational.
But you know what's crazy, John, is that in Hawaii right now, going back to hospitality, they locked away to honeymooners because they didn't quarantine according to the law. But last week they did allow locals to play golf. So you've got a governor that in Hawaii that basically is kowtowing to their voter base, especially their wealthy donor voter base, and letting them play golf. But if you took the time and all that money to take your honeymoon and you went to Hawaii, they're expecting you to stay in the room for 14 days. You can't go out. And so this couple is in jail because the crime they committed was going to the beach within 14 days. They got one warning, and then the second time, hotel called the cops, and the cops soon picked him up and put him in jail.
So, Tim, understanding what this has done to the travel business, the airlines, hotels, everything tourism related around the world, literally, is this a good time to book your summer vacation? Are you going to get some good deals right now because, maybe sites like yours or other similar sites are looking to write some business to make up some of these losses? Or would you advise consumers to wait a little longer?
There's great deals out there. I mean, we just booked a 5-star Miami Beach hotel over the weekend for $100 a night, the SLS. For $50 more a night, you got a suite. So there's plenty great deals out there. The question is, what we're seeing just as many cancellations every day as we see bookings, because you just don't know what these governors or the authorities are going to do day to day. And so, going back to the Hawaii example, we're going to step in and pay those people's bail. They didn't travel with us, but we want to do something for them to set a message that says, we gotta stand up for people that are on their vacation, or brave people that are still looking to travel and trying to travel and go about their lives and not have tyranny rain down upon them, because the laws that they're putting in, most of them make no sense. Like we were just an example. If you're a wealthy donor, you get to play golf. If you're not a voter and you're not from that state and you're just a vacationer, well, we're going to slap you and put you in jail.
Throw you in jail. Wow.
Just everything is just crazy. They obviously haven't really thought this out. And everybody's just changing the rules day by day. I mean, one of the things on the social distancing is their guidelines. And I know you guys had that unfortunate event with the cops in the East Village that went viral. And the cops said the right thing in that situation, which is we're not trained to be social distancing experts. And it's completely true because they're guidelines. They shouldn't be enforced like you're breaking the law just because you got too close to somebody else. It can happen.
No doubt.
People are going over the top on this right now.
That is for sure. Tim, we got to leave it there. We got to have you back and keep us updated on what's happening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Hentschel,
have a great one.
CEO of HotelPlanner.com. Check out Hotel Planner. He says there's some big deals if you want to travel after the summer. We're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back with nationally recognized attorney and author of Trump Must Win, Tisha Powell, right after this.